There we go. All right, so welcome to Meredith and Thomas. Good luck, Thomas. Meredith, I hope you feel better soon. Last week, I gave you poetry by Edward Lear. Is this right?
Yes.
Please always also correct me if I'm wrong, because Wednesday and Thursday are a week ahead of you, and I know. But next Wednesday, not tomorrow, but the next Wednesday, my Wednesday people are taking a break. That organization is taking a break, so they'll be back in sync. But Carter and Catherine on Thursdays are still going to be a week ahead of you.
Catherine, isn't she going to be?
Yeah, she may come. I don't know what she's doing. I need to ask her. So, which leaves Carter by himself on Thursdays, and he gets to come to my house and just sit and talk about Crime and Punishment for an hour and a half to me. Sure, he's really looking. He actually doesn't know he's coming alone yet. He's just going to show up and he's going to find out. Okay. I am not going to discuss the poetry of Edward Lear because, yeah, that's just what it is. It's just a bunch of silliness, and yeah.
I read it to my little sister, Bridget, and she was like, please just stop.
Oh no, we never, especially the Pelican Chorus. We live on the Nile we love. By night we sleep on the cliffs of That's all I remember. It just comes back to me. Okay, so the next poet we have is William Butler Yates.
Oh,
His name is spelled Yeats, but it's pronounced Yates.
I was pronounced it Yates.
It's Yates, but that's okay. You won't. Like,
Okay.
I was going to say you can pronounce it however you want. That's not really true, but he was Irish. And he's the first author that we're having this year that straddles into the 20th century. Oh, I don't know if that's true. I think Dostoyevsky, I've got a little bio here. Oh, no, he was born in 1821. If he lived into the 20th century, he was really seriously old. It's got to tell you when he died.
I think in mine if there's something that maybe.
It might tell in the back, but I'm not going to spend time. So anyway, the first poet that I know, that we are getting into the 20th century. So for me, anything that starts with 19 seems very, very recent, because I was born in 1966.
My dad.
1900s, really? So.
No, 1966.
So, same age. And Yates was Irish, and we haven't really talked a lot about this, but I think you probably know enough about Ireland to know that Ireland has had it really tough. Life has not been good for the Irish. The English annexed Ireland. We talked about Jonathan Swift, the Gulliver Travels guy, who wrote, did I send you that Modest Proposal? Or maybe we talked about it. He wrote an essay saying that they could raise their children to eat them, and that would get rid of poverty in Ireland. He was not suggesting this as a real thing to do. He was mocking people who don't understand the problems in Ireland. The English came in, and the English being Anglican after the early 1500s, and the Irish being Catholic, the Anglican English came, and they were the overlords, and they pretty much took all the property away from the Catholic Irish, said you cannot have a position of authority, you can't be in any sort of public office if you're Catholic. And they just drove people off their land. They just took their land. And then they wonder why the Irish are poor. And they wonder why the Irish fight back.
And also didn't with what's his face?
India?
No. No, the what's his name?
Scotland?
No. The English, that guy who came in and massacred
Cromwell.
Yeah, Cromwell. Yeah. Cromwell.
I just keep guessing. Eventually we get to it. Yes, Cromwell came in and I can't improve on the word massacre. That was a good choice. So over the years there were various uprisings in Ireland. At Easter weekend of 1916, I believe, there's something that's known as the Easter Uprising. We're talking about shooting and bombs going off in streets. even up until the 1970s, the Irish Republican Army, even when I was a little girl, you turn on, oh, a bomb went off in the streets of Dublin again because of this lasting problem. So I give you that background to tell you this is the world in which Yates grew up, all right? And so he actually wrote a poem about the Easter Uprising. I'm giving you that one. I've got 3 of his poems. I had 4, and I decided to delete one because the other one was kind of long. I thought you'd think it was boring. However, the first line of the one I deleted is called Sailing to Byzantium. There is no country for old men. That is the first line of the poem. Are you familiar that a few years ago there was a Oscar-winning movie called No Country for Old Men? Like, is that too old for you now? Tell me.
Sorry, I don't watch the Oscars.
It's a good movie, except it's violent. So parental consultation. Anyway. Well, I'm glad that would have been another one of my, hey, does this ring a bell? And you're all like, no. It's another one of Mrs. Ferguson's famous quotes. Okay, we have 3 poems. The first one is Leda and the Swan. I like that look. Okay, so you guys are familiar enough with Greek mythology, hopefully, to know that Zeus had a wife, but that was not good enough for him. And he spent a lot of time chasing after mortal women, turning himself into various attractive things. I don't know. Like, so for Danae, it was golden rain, and he turned into a white bull and swam off with Europa. In Leda's case, it was a swan.
What?
Okay, I don't think too hard about it. It helps if you just don't think too hard, because you just don't want to go there. He visited Leda in the form of a swan. I guess because in all his Zeusness, he would just wipe you out, like you just sizzle and disintegrate. You know, he's got to tamper it down a little bit. Leda is the mother of Helen of Troy. Helen, who got taken away. She's Zeus's daughter. This is why she's so doggone pretty that 1,000 ships sailed away to get her back. So, this is a poem about Zeus as a swan visiting Leda. But it mentions the broken wall, the burning roof and tower, and Agamemnon dead. In other words, the Trojan War. This event that doesn't seem to have anything to do with war is going to spark a war. One event is connected to another event, even though sometimes we don't see the connection originally. The second poem I'm giving you is called The Lake Isle of Innisfree. It says Innisfree, but apparently they pronounce it Innisfree. I learned this from listening to Celtic Woman. Innisfree. It is self-explanatory, I feel like. The last poem is called The Second Coming, and I just want to spend a moment talking about this. What do you think of when I say The Second Coming?
Jesus coming again.
Okay. No.
What?
I mean, yes, that's the right answer, but no for this poem. Yates was not a Christian. Do you remember, I said that Hopkins, with his pied beauty and the heavens declare the glory of God, except that's a psalm, that's not Jordan Manley Hopkins, but that was the same deal. That was his message. That it was refreshing because we had all this Dover Beach, Sea of Faith sucking out.
And then also, what's his face? You keep saying.
I don't remember what. I'm not sure, but.
Poe.
Oh, Poe. Yes, yes. Of kind of a moral, I don't know, moral ambiguity, moral non-existence. This is just a work of art, and by the way, that is not Dostoyevsky's view. There's a big difference between the axe murder you just read about and that guy killing the old guy because of his nasty eye, or the. Okay. But anyway, the second coming here. Let me go ahead and give you this one because I'm going to have extras. And I just want to read the first stanza together. So the good news about this poem is no one really knows what it means, which is refreshing. They argue about it. But we do know this. Yates was not a Christian. And so whatever this second coming that he's looking forward to, it's not Jesus. You're gonna like this. So apparently Yates wrote a book called The Vision, I think it is. And it was he was very into the occult. He was very into mystical, weird stuff. And he was into the Sphinx.
Oh, you?
I know, like the Sphinx,
No.
the Egypt thing.
Yeah.
That it was some mystical deity and it was gonna come back and do something. I don't know.
That's perfect.
I really, see, I should turn the camera, just, except I'm not supposed to apparently have minors on YouTube. Look, but I'm going to read the first stanza here together. Because this is going to be back to this 20th century, something is wrong with the world. Okay. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Okay, we're going to stop there. A gyre, something that goes around and around. Like gyrating. Okay, it goes around and around. Now, are you guys familiar with the idea of falconry? All right, people would keep falcons, and they'd have them on their arms, and they would train them. You'd hood it so it wouldn't see something and flap, and then you'd unhood it, and you'd flap and attack a bird of prey or whatever, or a bird, not necessarily a bird of prey, and then bring it back to you. You'd use it for hunting, okay? But then you'd have a call, a whistle or something, and the falcon would come back to you. So he says, turning and turning in a widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. So whatever the falcon represents for Yates, it's lost control. Okay, we've let go of something and it's just circling and circling and it can't hear the call. Okay. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Okay, so picture a wheel. It's got spokes, right? And the spokes hold the whole wheel together. But what if the central thing just breaks? It falls apart. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Whatever it is that's at the core of society or life or whatever, it's falling apart. It's like swinging freely. It doesn't come back, and it's falling apart. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. Okay. Blood-dimmed tide doesn't sound good. Doesn't sound good. And the ceremony of innocence, and then that made me think of Emma. When we were talking about ceremony and etiquette, the ceremony of innocence is drowned. Like the kindnesses, the little kindnesses that we do for each other that sort of hold society together. Remember, this is 100 years ago or more. And then he says this line is stunning. The best lack all conviction. All right. Conviction can mean more than one thing. What is something that conviction means?
Like dedication, or you know something.
All right. So if you have personal convictions, all right, like it's like your conscience. We say you were convicted. We're convicted of sin. You know, we read scripture or whatever, it convicts us. We also use it for like putting someone in jail. You know, they're convicted. I don't think he's using that in this sense. He's saying the best people we have lack all conviction. They don't feel anything strong enough to do anything about it. While the worst are full of passionate intensity. The best people we have don't care about anything enough to do anything. The worst people we have are full of passionate intensity. Now, do we see passionate intensity in society of late? Over the past 6 months, year? Oh my goodness. And not always the best. It can sometimes be the worst. What is worse than being passionately intense? It's when it's for a bad cause. This is a stunning line from 100 years ago, but it kind of describes the last 100, 150 years. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. He has said in this stanza, something is deeply wrong with the world. We don't know what it is. We know what it is because God has revealed to us what it is. It's sin is what it is. That's what's wrong with the world. And we have forgotten the answer. You know, there is an answer. It's the Lord. And our society, even if individual people didn't know it once upon a time, our society knew. We don't eat anymore. I was driving here and I was thinking about this poem, and G.K. Chesterton, who's a great Christian writer, also about 100 years ago, he said, basically we're like people who have forgotten. We've forgotten who we are. We've forgotten who we were created to be. We've forgotten where we come from. And he said sometimes there are terrible moments when we remember that we have forgotten. Like, there's more than this. I'm more than this. And I feel like Yates is having one of those moments. Like, we've forgotten something, and I'm remembering that we've forgotten, but I don't know if we've forgotten. Okay, I'm going to let you read the rest of it. Although it does mention a shape with lion body and head of a man. That would be the Sphinx. And see if you can figure out what his answer is. Good luck with that, since people continue to argue about what the heck this poem is about. But it also means you can't really come with a wrong answer. Pretty much anything you come back next week and say, I think the poem's about this. Okay, maybe. All right. Into our book. Why in the world? I'm sorry? What? Oh, okay. That's fine. Why did Raskolnikov kill this old lady? The younger sister was what we would refer to as collateral damage, I guess. She wasn't supposed to die. She just was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Maybe just because the lady wasn't nice. Because, I mean, obviously he didn't want the money or anything.
Yeah, because he used any of the money?
No, he just put it under a stone.
As far as I can tell, he didn't even look in the little purse to see how much money was in it. Yeah. And he needs money. So, apparently robbery was not the motive. Yeah, apparently this lady was not a nice lady.
Yeah.
Maybe he's just
I
mad.
didn't really understand why he killed her. I was like,
maybe he's just mad to see
it was just
people
kind of
have so
like
much.
strange. It was just kind of like, oh, go kill somebody.
Yeah.
No motive or anything.
Like he's condemning her sin.
Yeah, maybe he's just like mad that she has like so much and doesn't use it wisely or whatever, you know.
But he also could have been motivated by those people in the bar too.
Yeah.
Maybe they were talking about that. But then, like, I don't know.
But he was already thinking about it before.
Yeah.
We know he was thinking about it before. He's been considering this for some time. And apparently targeted her as a good candidate. But has nothing to do with using the money. If it makes you feel any better, in the reading you're going to do for this coming week, you're going to start getting clues. It's not just going to be random. It is random, but he actually has a thought process behind what he's done. Although you can't really get it out of the first fourth of the book. For you on the video, they have a St. Bernard here now, and he's breathing very heavily. It's making us laugh. Let me go through some of my flags here. I have some questions for you guys. You're going to help me understand this better. So we get flung into Raskolnikov's life suddenly. There's no intro. We don't know who this guy is. We don't know where he's from. We don't know what his story is. And he's walking around at night. And he says, he's walking around at night on the streets. And he's getting a little nervous. He's nervous out there. He's also afraid of his landlady. Because he owes his landlady rent. Mega rent. He says, I want to attempt a thing like that. And am frightened by these trifles, he thought with an odd smile. Yes. All is in a man's hands, and he lets it all slip from cowardice. That's an axiom. It would be interesting to know what it is men are most afraid of. Taking a new step, uttering a new word, is what they fear most. So my first question for discussion today is, do you agree with him? What is there to fear in taking a new step, doing a new thing?
You don't know the outcome or how it'll go.
You certainly do not know the outcome, especially if it's new to you. You don't know if you're going to be able to do it well or how you're going to react. What else is scary about maybe taking a new step or doing a new thing?
You don't know how much it'll take, like how much effort it'll take or something.
Maybe you're not going to be up to the challenge. Maybe you'll try and you'll fail.
Yeah, you're gonna find your boundaries.
I'm thinking, have you all watched the Lord of the Rings movies?
Yeah.
It's okay if you haven't. So there's a character named Sam, and he's lived in this area all his life. And there's a scene where he says, if I take one more step, I've been farther away from home than I've ever been. I leave the county, I leave the precincts of my home. You take that step and then it's done. You know, you can't go back. There's certain steps you take and you can't undo. When you do that new thing, take that step. Maybe that's scary. Doing something that you can't undo. The junior high kids have been reading about Julius Caesar crossing the Rubicon River and not being able to take that step back. That he's basically declared war on Rome by crossing that river with his army. It's done. I can't take it back. What do you think, Raskolnikov, this is an easy question, what new step do you think he's contemplating? What?
Murdering, whatever her name is.
Murderer. He says that's what people are most afraid of. He goes on to say, why am I going there now? Am I capable of that? Is that serious? It is not serious at all. It is simply a fantasy to amuse myself, a plaything. Yes, maybe it is a plaything. Until you actually do it, until you take the step, anything is just an idea, a thought.
Yeah.
But the moment you do it, it's not anymore. It reminds me of it's sort of like any sin. Do you know what I mean? I'm contemplating how I would rob a bank, and this is how I would do it, and this is it's not good. I don't go contemplating robbing anything. I don't condone that. But it's not the same as actually taking the step and doing it.
Like in the Bible, like Jesus said, like he says like, he said like don't hate your brother. Like even in your heart, you're still like committing murder. Even in your heart,
Mm-hmm.
you know, even when you're not actually
Yes.
doing the sin, like
Yes.
still you're
So
giving in.
so contemplation is not scot-free.
No.
I don't. But there is definitely until you've done it, you can change your mind about it.
Right.
And obviously, certain things just cannot be undone. Murder is a big one. You know, like if you steal, you could give the stuff back.
Yeah.
But you can't bring life back. So certain steps are more irrevocable than others. So apparently he does trial runs. He's been going to this lady. Now, how does this lady make her living? This old gal.
Pawn. She has like pawn. Like she pawn.
She buys people's stuff from them for less than it's worth.
Yes. Basically, she's a pawnbroker. She's a private pawn shop. And people who are hard up on their luck give her a pledge, and then if you want to redeem it, you can bring back the money plus interest and get it back. And if you don't bring it back within a certain time, she just gets it and she can sell it for whatever she wants. And he goes to visit her, and so we get this description of her. Remember how Jane Austen didn't describe anybody physically? He is really.
Yeah, he's
Very
really.
Oh
funny.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Especially like when he's killing her, and he's like, man, like when he hit her on the head, and he hit like he was talking about like her head and what he hit. I was like, damn.
Yeah. No, he's very precise. So this is the old woman. She was a diminutive, withered up old woman of 60, with sharp, malignant eyes and a sharp little nose. Her colorless, somewhat grizzled hair was thickly smeared with oil, and she wore no kerchief over it. Round her thin, long neck, which looked like a hen's leg, I love that. She has a neck like a chicken leg. Really skinny. Was knotted some sort of flannel rag, and in spite of the heat there hung flapping on her shoulders a mangy fur cape yellow with age. The old woman coughed and groaned at every instant. Okay, 2 questions. First of all, does this woman have plenty of money in the house?
Yeah.
Yes, apparently she has money locked away. He overhears someone, if it's the people talking about him, saying, oh, she could give you thousands of rubles, just off the bat because she keeps it somewhere in the house. Does she dress or act like someone with oodles of money in the house?
No.
Mangy yellow fur cape. I can just see mangy yellow with age, like bits of the fur falling out. It's gross. And then she doesn't eat enough because her neck looks like a chicken leg.
Unless it's just
It's genetic.
Yeah.
She eats like a horse. And she's one of those women. She doesn't seem to be making use of it. And it reminds me of another fictional character. Does anybody know the fictional character has plenty of money but lives super poor? I'm thinking there's many movie versions of this character.
Her name's Bailey. Yeah. It's like compared Bailey and then this Bailey. It's like
Nobody.
I
A
can't
miser.
think.
Someone who's notorious for being a miser.
Is it
Oh.
like I'm thinking of Scrooge.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Ebenezer
I was
Scrooge.
thinking about that too, and I was like, wait,
Yeah,
what is
now
this?
you know what I was thinking of too.
But then I was
I
like,
picture.
yeah, I should probably not even.
So every movie version I've ever seen of A Christmas Carol, Scrooge is very wealthy.
yeah.
At the end, he can buy all that stuff, and he just hands it out, and all the toys, and all the bottles of wine, and everything. But he lives. It's nasty. All right. Generally, in the movie version, there's a musical. Scrooge, the musical, is the one I always watch every Christmas Eve, and we have our Christmas Eve dinner, and then we watch Scrooge. Anyway, and he's got one of those beds that have curtains around them. Do you know, to keep out drafts? But they're all in the movie version. It's like there's holes in them, and they're all frayed and tattered. And when it's close up, he's got dirt under his fingernail. Like it's just nasty. He's nasty, but he's really wealthy. And this tells you something about his character, right? That he's highly greedy, but for what?
Just
Do you know
for
what I
the sake
mean?
of having it. And
Yeah.
so then if they think that if they use it, it's gonna go, and then they can't have the feeling of just having it.
Because, Raskolnikov doesn't use the money once he gets it. This lady isn't using the money, and it's really hers. Although it does sound like she drives a hard bargain. We don't know that she actually cheats anyone. But, I mean, you can take it or leave it, whatever she's offering for your stuff. But, yeah, I mean, she strikes me as a miser. As a Scrooge miser, living in dilapidated surroundings with his mangy yellow fur and hunks of fur coming out of it. It's gross. But she's got plenty of money. So he shows up for his trial run, to see, okay, this is what it's going to look like, this is going to happen, but he hasn't done it yet. And we find out that this lady is just a nasty miser. Then he goes home, heads home after his trial run, but he stops in a bar. People stop in bars a lot in Russian novels. This is a heavy drinking component. I think I told you last week, 19th century Russia was, 20th century Russia wasn't a picnic, but 19th century Russia also was not a very good place to be. And And so he hooks up with this guy, Marmeladov, who just really drinks all day.
Pretty much.
He had a job, and then he lost his job. Then he got another job, and then he stole money from his wife, and he drank that money too. And he says this. He's very talkative.
Very, very talkative.
Yeah. You can picture Raskolnikov, like, somebody gonna rescue me for this guy. Honored sir, he began almost with solemnity. Poverty is not a vice. That's a true saying. Yet I know too that drunkenness is not a virtue. And that's even truer. But beggary, honored sir, beggary is a vice. In poverty you may still retain your innate nobility of soul, but in beggary, never, no one. For beggary a man is not chased out of a human society with a stick, he is swept out with a broom, so as to make it as humiliating as possible. Okay, so can you just in your own words, what does Marmeladov think is bad in his situation? He says poverty, being poor doesn't make you a bad person.
Like
It's not
asking,
retaining your dignity.
yeah, like asking for help and like asking for money. So then it's just like you're too proud to ask for anything.
Okay. Do you agree with him? That beggary makes you, well, he doesn't actually say
No, I
beggary
don't.
makes you a bad person, but he says it's a vice, which implies that it's a moral failing
I
to
think
be a
it
beggar.
depends on in your situation, because if you're someone who's begging but could easily like look for work instead, I feel like that's one thing. But then the people who don't even have the option to look for work, then I don't know if that's a total bad thing.
Like my mom, whenever like we would like be off like at the interstate, and like the guys like they'd be like begging, like mom's like I mean I don't really need to because they make more money than my brother does. Like my brother does in a year, like they make like 60,000, in like like a few months. Like I don't think it's not what it's just like I just feel kind of like I feel like I'm taking something away from my brother rather than
Mm-hmm.
And then there's
like,
the people in DC who actually are poor.
yeah
Mm-hmm.
Like
yeah
when we went to Washington DC for March for Life,
Yeah.
there's actually the people who do need the money.
Yeah, like
living on the street.
a vision that I had, like one time we went to Philadelphia and there was this old man wearing high heels. So that's when it's like desperate. But like, but when they can get it, like when they can actually work for it, when they're not lazy, like they.
And they have like an iPhone.
Yeah, well, like
Yeah.
I'm like thinking of like a relative and like he prefers just not to work.
So which category would you put Marmeladov in?
I would put him in Sprout probably.
In
He
the-
could definitely be
Yeah.
working.
Because he had a job.
Yeah.
Not only could he be working, but he had a legit job. He got the job, and you remember he said his wife was all happy and she was making him a nice breakfast, and they got him the best
Poor
clothes that they
wife.
could.
Yeah.
Poor wife.
And then he just steals the money from
And then he
Well,
just stole the
yeah.
money, yeah. And they've got hungry
And didn't his
kids.
daughter give him money too?
His daughter gave him money. We're going to talk about his daughter here in a minute. So maybe his view is colored. That beggary is a vice. Maybe it's a vice for him because he doesn't need to be in that condition. But he says something else on the very next page, though. Interestingly, he says, because the other guys, the innkeeper and the other guys are kind of taunting him because he drinks there a lot. They ask him why he's not at his job. Why am I not at my duty? Does not my heart ache to think what a useless worm I am? A month ago, when Mr. Lebeziatnikov beat my wife with his own hands, and I lay drunk, didn't I suffer? Excuse me, young man, has it ever happened that to petition hopelessly for a loan? Okay, just to here he said that beggary was a vice, and here he says he was asking this guy for a loan, but he didn't really think he would get it. Isn't he begging this guy? What? I'm confused. So did he think beggary was a vice then? Or does he think it's a vice now because he couldn't get the money that he needed? So he goes on. Oh, does he go on?
No.
Oh, he does. We get his life story.
Mm-hmm.
He has an older daughter that is not his daughter with his present wife. It's from a previous marriage, Sonia.
Mm-hmm.
And do you guys understand what has Sonia been driven to do?
Was it to marry?
Now that's Raskolnikov's sister Dunia.
Okay.
Because I want to ask because other students have not noticed this. Okay,
I thought it was
so
about selling your soul or something. Was that it? Or was that later?
yeah, but souls don't sell very well. What does sell on the streets?
Her body, maybe?
Bodies sell. She was made to become a prostitute. That's how she's earning her living. She doesn't want to. So Marmeladov is talking, and he says he was laying drunk, of course, during this time, and the little ones were hungry and they were crying, and Katerina Ivanovna, that's his wife, walking up and down and wringing her hands. Her cheeks flushed red, as they always are in that disease. His wife has also apparently got tuberculosis. Here you live with us, says she. She's talking to Sonia. You live with us. You eat and drink and are kept warm, and you do nothing to help. And much she gets to eat and drink when there is not a crust for the little ones for 3 days. I was lying at the time. Well, what of it? I was lying drunk. And I heard my Sonia speaking. She's a gentle creature with a soft little voice, fair hair, and such a pale, thin little face. She said, Katerina Ivanovna, am I really to do a thing like that? And Darya Fransovna, a woman of evil character and well known to the police, had 2 or 3 times tried to get to her through the landlady. In other words, there's a lady who runs prostitutes, and she's been trying to get at Sonia, trying to recruit her. And why not? Said Katerina Ivanovna with a jeer. You are something mighty precious to be so careful of. But don't blame her, honored sir, don't blame her. She was not herself when she spoke, but driven to distraction by her illness and the crying of the hungry children. And it was said more to wound her than anything else. At 6 o'clock I saw Sonia get up, put on her kerchief and her cape, and go out of the room, and about 9 o'clock she came back. She walked straight to Katerina Ivanovna and laid 30 rubles on the table before her in silence. She did not utter a word. She did not even look at her. She simply picked up our big green shawl and put it over her head and face, and lay down on the bed with her face to the wall. Only her little shoulders and her body kept shuddering. She was crying. This is a seriously dysfunctional, horrible family. We have not seen the last of them, by the way. Maybe you're happy about that. Maybe, yeah.
Is the guy gonna come back?
Throughout the book. Not throughout the book.
Is he gonna come back?
No, tell me. Okay, so well, yeah, let's talk about this. He's going home. He finally gets away from Marmeladov. Oh my gosh. And he's walking home and he encounters another girl. She's drunk. And her clothes are ripped. And he suspects that she's been gotten drunk and taken advantage of somewhere. And there's a nasty looking guy with his eye on her. Do you remember this episode?
Yeah.
And Raskolnikov is really worried. He's worried that this guy is a predator. And that as soon as he leaves, and he leaves them alone, he's going to take this woman somewhere and further abuse her. So he ends up in a fight with him, and then the police come. So here's my question. What do we learn about Raskolnikov from this whole episode?
I'd say, he's a noble character.
Yeah, that's the weird thing. He gives the police money. He regrets it later. He gives them kopecks. I looked this up on Thursday. My students wanted to know. And it looks like now rubles are worth almost nothing. But in the 19th century, rubles are basically dollars and kopecks are basically pennies. You know, you can kind of, but obviously dollars were worth a lot more but you can kind of think of it in that way. So $30, 30 rubles, you know, I mean, a fair amount of money then. But he gives his last kopecks, whatever, the change that he got in the bar. And later he's like, oh, why did I do that? But yeah, he's afraid to leave this girl alone. Now, jumping ahead in the story, his sister, Dunia. Obviously, his mother and his sister are bad off.
Yeah.
They live somewhere out in the country. They live outside of St. Petersburg. Why does Raskolnikov get so upset when he reads that letter about how Dunia is going to marry that guy?
Because he knows that she wouldn't actually want to do that.
So why is she doing it?
Is it for him?
What is Raskolnikov going to get out of this marriage?
He's gonna get a job.
Okay, he's going to get a job because the guy has connections. His sister's going to get fed and taken care of. And his mother is going to be, you know, cared for, not in high style, but she's not going to starve to death. So do you see the connection with Sonia, who has prostituted herself literally? This girl who's drunken in the street, and if she's not a prostitute, at least she's headed that direction. And his sister, who's willing to contract a marriage. It's not prostitution, but I don't know, if you marry somebody for money, it's not the same. But you see, we see these women, these over and over, these three women, and so he's just had these experiences. He's heard about Sonia, and he's seen this woman, and then he gets this letter about his sister. It's like, my sister's just one of those. She's doing this. She's going to sacrifice herself for me, just like Sonia sacrificed herself for Marmeladov's family, for her little brothers and sisters. And he's not going to let her do it. Well, he doesn't want to let her do it. Well, it remains to be seen how much power he has. Because the guy comes off as a little bit of a jerk in the letter. Like the mom is trying to gloss it over, you know. Well, you know, he let slip that he really wanted to find a poor wife that he could lift up from pop.
Yeah, so he could look.
Yeah, so I can look good.
Yeah.
I can look like the benefactor.
And then he's going to pay for the luggage.
Yeah, I'll pay for the luggage, but you have to get your own tickets to come.
Yeah.
And then they get to be in third class.
Yeah, and it takes him all day to get there, and then you're going to find out in this next section that he puts them up in kind of a seedy, the equivalent of a very seedy motel. All right. Wow. Okay, so I thought this was interesting. After this episode where he's trying to defend this girl against the shifty guy, he's describing what happens to these girls. You know, and maybe he hasn't got the letter yet, but this might be in his mind. He's thinking, what might happen to my sister? What might my sister become after living with this jerk for 5 years, 10 years? He says, poor girl. She will come to herself and weep, and then her mother will find out. She will give her a beating, a horrible, shameful beating, and then maybe turn her out of doors. And even if she does not, the Darya Francenovnas will get wind of it. All right, the people who run prostitutes. And the girl will soon be slipping out on the sly here and there. Then there will be the hospital, a wreck, her life over at 18 or 19. Have I not seen cases like that? And how have they been brought to it? Why, they all come to it like that. Ugh, what does it matter? That's as it should be, they tell us. A certain percentage, they tell us, must every year go that way, to the devil, I suppose, so that the rest may remain chaste and not be interfered with. A percentage. What splendid words they have. They're so scientific, so consolatory. Once you've said percentage, there's nothing more to worry about. If we had any other word, we might feel more uneasy. But what if Dunia were one of the percentage? Of another one, if not that one. All right? What is his point? Can you put that in your own words? Why does it matter that we say this happens to a percentage of the population? Whatever it is.
Like, I mean, isn't it like he was referring to, like, it's like it doesn't really matter, like, percentage until it actually is somebody that you know, or so then if you like say a percentage, say 2%, then that's small, but then say it's like your sister, she's part of that 2%, and then you're just like that's horrible.
So does anybody have something to add to what Alondra said? This was convicting to me, okay, because I've been kind of like not caring about COVID. I mean, frankly, statistically, it's just not that dangerous. But my grandpa, my mother isn't one of the percent. Do you see what I mean? Like, if I had, Great Grandpa Joe died of COVID from an outbreak in a nursing home, I tell myself that I would still feel like not about Grandpa Joe. I don't have Grandpa Joe. He's a figment of my imagination. I do have grandparents. But that I would still be able to look at the statistics and say, for the average population, this is not a big threat, that perhaps we are taking measures that are more than we need to. But yet, when it's your loved one that's one of the percent, you feel different about it, right? But when we say it, that when it's all statistical, when it's mathematical, it's just sort of out there. It's just, a certain percentage of women just become prostitutes. Isn't that a shame? If it's your daughter, you don't care what percent it is, right? Or a certain percent, get hooked on drugs and drug overdose. But it's my son. Now it touches me. And I wonder, you remember, so rewind in your mind way back to September, whenever it was, Descartes. And this idea of man as a machine and everything being studied outside of it in a scientific way. So that's not just Descartes, that's the whole scientific revolution. Kind of distances us from problems, Like we just sort of, it's a problem out there and it happens to a certain percent or a certain section of the population. And so we study it like it's a scientific thing and not human beings.
Yeah, it's like you say, like, okay, maybe like 56% population like ends up getting Alzheimer's. Like at first, I mean, I was like, that's really sad. Like, and then like my grandpa has it. Like that is way different. Like
Yes.
I don't care about percentages. Like
Yes.
that is for real. Like okay, like this is serious. Like so it's. You become worried about it, you kind of want to do something about it rather than like, oh, okay, or like, so many, 85% of the population ends up getting cancer and dying from it. Well, it's just.
Yes.
Yeah, I
really
saw somebody post something. They were like, you don't care until it happens to you, and like you shouldn't care. Like you shouldn't be able to start caring until it happens to you. You should start caring even though you don't know anything. And so I was like, well, yeah, that's kind of true. I mean, there are some things that I just don't really care about because I'm not really at a threat of it. But then like, and it's kind of just like but then there's a whole bunch of things. But yeah, it's kind of like selfish when people.
But if we loved our neighbor as ourselves, then that person's problems would be our problems, But we don't. We don't. But remember, so to jerk us back into the plot, this is the guy who's considering axe murdering an old chicken leg neck lady. I can't get over that. All I see is the neck. Picture her in my head. And this doesn't seem like the same guy. He's worried about, a certain percent of old ladies get axe murdered. Like versus it's this person. So I don't know, do you get the impression that maybe Raskolnikov he's not a split personality exactly. He's not schizophrenic, but he definitely has the part that, I feel for, I don't know how I feel about Marmeladov, but I don't know how you could listen to that story and not at least feel sorry for Sonia if you don't feel sorry for Marmeladov or his wife. I feel sorry for this girl on the street. I feel sorry for my sister. Yet,
We go axe murder.
I'm going to go kill this
He's
old
just
lady.
a chameleon.
He is. So, interestingly, see, I just trouble getting into this whole world where people just like walk around the streets drunk all the time. Okay, I'm sure it wasn't. I think it's just
like 2 or 3 in the morning when all the drunk people come out of the bars, like
Yes.
all screaming.
And you know what? I'm sure there are parts of town in the Quad Cities. Do you know what I mean? It depends on what part of town we
Last
happen
night
to
our
be in.
neighbors were out. It scared me. I thought it was animals, but our neighbors just really weird. Like, we were a nice neighborhood, but our neighbors are wacko. I'm pretty sure those are our neighbors, like making sounds and stuff. I was like, okay.
Are they kids or adults?
Adults.
Okay, well that's...
I think they were drinking maybe. It was just...
Okay.
Wow.
So he says, okay, he came out of the tavern. He drank a glass of vodka and ate a pie of some sort. Okay, then he finished his vodka. His legs felt suddenly heavy and a great drowsiness came upon him. He turned homewards, but reaching Petrovsky Ostrov, he stopped, completely exhausted, turned off the road into the bushes, sank down upon the grass, and instantly fell asleep.
I was like, what the heck?
I wish I could do that.
What?
Me too.
Just go out the
Apparently,
side
if you
of the
drink enough vodka, you can.
Well, yeah,
Don't do that, though.
Yeah, I've heard stories about like they just like fall asleep in a bush.
Okay, so he has a dream.
That dream is
All right, we're going to see several dreams in this book. Yes.
Yeah.
So just to remind you, if you don't, it sounds like most of you remember. You know, he dreams that there's this guy and he owns a horse, and the horse is hooked up to a cart, and the guy is just beating and beating and beating the horse to death, saying, "Pile on, he can haul us all. I'll make him run." And people are saying, a few people. There's an old man who's saying that's not a Christian thing to do, but he's kind of chuckling about it. And he says, the guy responds, the guy who owns the horse, "It's my property and I can do anything I want to with it. It's my property." Well, apparently this is a place that Raskolnikov knew as a child. It's his own town, and this was a real place because he's a little boy, and he goes and he's just horrified, and he's cradling the horse's head in his hands, and he's petting it, and it's awful. Okay, so be a psychoanalyst for me. Tell me what this dream means. Why does Raskolnikov dream this dream?
I honestly do not know. It was just kind of a...
You know, there's...
Go ahead.
So, my psychology class, and I've
Oh,
heard several
Marta
things
is going
about
to
this.
explain everything because she's taken a psychology class. Go for it.
One of those psychology.
And I've heard also tons of this, like, your dreams, they're like messages, like to you that, even though it may not seem like they're dreams, messages to you that something's happened to you, or you've been through a situation, or like, you know, and so there's just like memories. That's what Saint Augustine, like, you can't sin your dreams, but like the dreams are like something that you've done or something that's happened.
Could it be something you
like,
fear?
Yeah,
Maybe it's like everyone's going against him and he's trying to do the right thing, but even the people who seem like they might be trying to do the right thing really aren't doing the right thing. Like the guy who's chuckling after.
Yeah, people, well, that's wrong, but then they don't do anything about it. Like,
So we have situations like Sonia and Dunia and the girl, the unnamed girl in the street who's been attacked, and it's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry for you. I want to take care of you." Here's my question, though. Is there anyone else in the dream that Raskolnikov may be a little bit like? Remember?
The guy who chuckles after he tells him not to.
Maybe. Remember what Raskolnikov is considering doing.
like,
Well, it was kind of like, well, that's like the owner guy.
Yeah.
Because that's what I thought of, like, right away when he was going to kill it with the axe. I was like, oh, well, he's like the horse owner. Because, you know, with the, I don't know.
Just beating him and
Just
beating him
beating
for
him.
no
Like
reason.
Yeah, for no reason.
Absolutely no motive. It's like the horse did anything to him.
Right.
And then when the horse like tries to pull in between, it's so sad.
When I first read that, I was crying. It was really
I'm sorry. See, apologetic on this book, but yeah, so we've got two guys almost. I'm the little boy. I deeply care about they're not just percentages to me. They're human beings. But yet, on the flip side, I'm willing to murder, to kill an innocent. And notice he keeps screaming, "It's my property. I can do whatever I like with it." Well, all that stuff is the old woman's property. She can do whatever. You remember they were razzing her because it was known to everyone she was going to leave it to a monastery.
Yeah.
She wasn't going to leave it to Elizaveta, her half sister. She was going to leave all the money to a monastery. It's my property. I can do what I want to with it. It was a very satisfied. I wish I could sleep like that. I wish my nights, I don't know that I just sound like that, but it would be nice if my nights were kind of like that.
It's like a horse. Horses just like throw themselves on the ground, their legs stuck out.
Yeah.
So
Or goats.
he almost gets to the point where he's decided he's not going to go through with this. Okay, that was a stupid thing. I'm not going to go ahead and do it. I don't remember at what point in the plot he ends up getting. No, it's after he does it that he gets called in because his landlady's suing him, basically. He goes to a bar again, and well, we should probably think of these as like bar and grill or pub or something. It's not like there's food served. Yes, he happens to sit down, which he considers. I hate to use the term providential for something so evil, but he considers it a sign that he's thinking about this, and he happens to sit down next to a table where two people are talking about the same people.
Have you ever had that kind of situation?
Yes.
Like
I don't think it ever.
Like you're thinking about doing something, and then you like sit down, and the people next to you are talking about that, and you're just like, like
It's
is
hard
this
not-
like is this coincidence, or is
Yes.
this just like maybe I'm not supposed to do this, or maybe it's like I don't know, like I happen to be here at the right time. Like, is it an accident, or is it like I don't know? Because some people would think, oh, that's fate, but like, is it, or is it actually I'm supposed to be here?
It's providence, like
It's-
leading you.
It's hard not to read something into it.
Right.
I mean, I don't really blame him for that. If you're randomly thinking about attacking, hopefully that's not what any of us are thinking about. But yes, I know exactly what you mean. Just something's on your mind, and then you hear someone, you overhear something that is exactly that thing. So they're talking about the fact that this lady is just really a jerk. She's a jerk to her sister. She beats her sister. She's going to leave all her money to the monastery. She's not going to leave anything to take care of her sister. And so one of the guy asked the other one this question. He says, the one guy said, now I tell you what, I could kill that old woman and make off with her money, I assure you, without the faintest conscience prick. All right. So he goes on. He says, I was joking, of course, but look here. On one side, we have a stupid, senseless, worthless, spiteful, ailing, horrid old woman, not simply useless, but doing actual mischief, who has not an idea what she is living for herself, and who will die in a day or two in any case. You understand? You understand? Yes, I understand, answered the officer, watching his excited companion attentively. Well, listen then. On the other side, fresh young lives thrown away for want of help, and by thousands on every side. 100,000 good deeds could be done and helped on that old woman's money, which will be buried in a monastery. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, might be set on the right path. Dozens of families saved from destitution, from ruin, from vice, from hospitals, all with her money. Kill her, take her money, and with the help of it devote oneself to the service of humanity and the good of all. What do you think? Would not one tiny crime be wiped out by thousands of good deeds? For one life, thousands would be saved from corruption and decay. One death and 100 lives in exchange. It's simple arithmetic. Besides, what value has the life of that sickly, stupid, ill-natured old woman in the balance of existence? No more than the life of a louse, of a black beetle. Less, in fact, because the old woman is doing harm. One crime, one death, and then you use it to do all sorts of good. What do you think? Is it a good argument bad argument.
So you're using, like, basically, like, people say, you know, two bad deeds make like a good, or
They
yeah.
cancel out.
Yeah, two wrongs
Yeah.
don't make a right. Or,
you can't do that.
No,
Like, you
no,
can't, you know,
it's only with
murder
electricity.
someone just because. I mean,
But
you
that
know, so many,
argument can
like,
carry
throughout
over.
history, so many people hear about these countries, they've, you know, murdered their rulers, evil rulers, but then, like, the people rise up and they liberate themselves. But then, like, I mean, look at, like, even Stalin's history. Like, he rose up, you know, overthrew the Bolsheviks, but, like, still, he was even worse than them.
he was horrible.
And so, like, you can't do that. Like, I just think that, no, sometimes you just, things, just because they can be, like you said, just because they can be done, doesn't mean they should be done, even though it might be, like, moral good for everyone. It's not good, like.
Yeah, you can't do a good deed to
that's
justify a bad deed.
You
What were
can't.
you going to say, Remy?
I don't know, like that argument. It's a very hard argument to make because you could be like, on one hand, yes, it is good, but on the other hand, like, no, it's not.
Well, I mean, you
Because you are trying to like justify a murder for the good of people, but you could also use that with like Hitler. Like, oh yeah, these people were going to go murder Hitler. Yes, it would have been a great thing because it would have saved, you know, thousands and millions of people, but it's still a bad thing to do. Or even like with the Nagasaki and the bomb and stuff like that. Yes, they did end the war, but millions of lives were lost. But the after effect of that did, you know, end the war and everything. But you could also do that like with like even like most recent like bombings of terrorists or stuff like that. Like just the recent one. Yes, he did kill one terrorist, but how many other lives were lost in that bombing too? So it's kind of like a, I don't know.
There's also the chance that once you have that money in your hands, you're not going to want to use it for the cause that you
This
said
is
you were
true.
going to use it for. So it's a different thing to say what you're going to do with it when you get it, and then actually follow through with it.
Yeah. And most importantly, which is not being taken into consideration here, chicken leg neck or not, this woman is a human being created in the image of God.
Right. Yeah.
That is, they're considering blotting out. You know, so you were using the term good. He used the term good. It's for the good of mankind. Then we have to define good, right? What is the good? For the material benefit, for, you know, is good truth and beauty and justice, or is good material benefit?
I like what's wholesome.
What? Yes.
I don't like the word good.
Because there's also truth, but
Good
then
isn't good.
It's
To
not.
use in
Yeah.
anything.
truth, and then like maybe you are manipulating the view of truth, or you're what was the thing? Or making excuses, or I forgot the word that we were using. Justifying.
Yeah.
We were justifying yourself for like something you might get out of it. Like you're saying, but I'm helping other people. I don't know. So then it's just the way how you look at truth, which is good. And yeah, it's just a lot of.
We're going to look at justifying things more next week, because, like I said, it's going to open up. You're going to find some more motivations in what you're going to read for next week. I'm reading my flags. I have quite a collection. How do we use them?
Yeah, she's sleeping with the dog.
Okay, so after he commits this murder, he ends up at the police office, which he's scared to death. All right, and my flag here, I flagged Raskolnikov fancied that the head clerk treated him more casually and contemptuously after his speech, but strange to say, he suddenly felt completely indifferent to anyone's opinion. And this revulsion took place in a flash, in one moment. If he had cared to think a little, he would have been amazed indeed that he could have talked to them like that a minute before, forcing his feelings upon them. And where had those feelings come from? Now, if the whole room had been filled, not with police officers, but with those nearest and dearest to him, He would not have found one human word for them, so empty was his heart. A gloomy sensation of agonizing, everlasting solitude and remoteness took conscious form in his soul. Something was happening to him entirely new, sudden and unknown. He took a step, he took a new step, he murdered someone. Something else is happening new and unknown. It was not that he understood, but he felt clearly with all the intensity of sensation that he could never more appeal to these people in the police office with sentimental effusions, like his recent outburst, or with anything whatever. He had never experienced such a strange and awful sensation. And what was most agonizing, it was more a sensation than a conception or idea, a direct sensation, the most agonizing of all the sensations he had known in his life. He's in a room full of people, and suddenly he realizes, I'm completely separate from all of you. I have nothing to say to you. I'm like, there's a wall of separation between us. I am totally and utterly alone. I took the step. I did the thing. Now I'm on the other side, like there's a dividing wall. I crossed the line, and you guys are all on the other side of the wall. Suddenly, he's just done it. This is the next day. And he suddenly, I am detached from the rest of mankind. I took my step, and suddenly I'm in a new category. And it's not a pleasant category. So, you know, you probably think, okay, it's called Crime and Punishment, and we've only read a fourth and we've seen the crime. Man, we got 3/4 of the book for punishment? Seriously? All right. And yeah, it is a bit of a murder mystery, except we know who the murderer is.
Maybe it's just a
But-
mystery you have to find out what the punishment is.
But has the punishment already started?
Yeah.
The punishment is already coming down on him. Suddenly, he has nothing in common with other human beings. So he goes to Razumihin. I do not know that I'm saying these names right. Do not use me as your, you know, like your pattern. Who was his old friend and who, frankly, seems like a nice enough guy. We're going to see a lot more of him. We're going to get to know him much better. And he treats him not, I don't know how to say it. Like, does he treat him like an old friend? He's all, well, first of all, he's ill. I guess that's another thing we should talk about. Sounds like he'd been getting sick for some time, but he became really physically ill.
Did he like almost die?
Yeah. Oh, and there's one more thing I wanted to talk about. Glasses on again. Okay, so he says this is another, I don't know, punishment. But back when he was a student, he used to take a particular route home. He used to walk back and forth across this bridge. And it says, the sky without a cloud and the water was almost bright blue, which is so rare in the Neva, which apparently is a district. The cupola of the cathedral, which is seen at its best from the bridge about 20 paces from the chapel, glittered in the sunlight, and in the pure air every ornament on it could be clearly distinguished. He stood still, gazing long and intently into the distance. This spot was especially familiar to him. When he was attending the university, he had hundreds of times, generally on his way home, stood still on this spot, gazed at this truly magnificent spectacle, and almost always marveled at a vague and mysterious emotion it roused in him. It left him strangely cold. This gorgeous picture was for him blank and lifeless. He wondered every time at his somber and enigmatic impression, and mistrusting himself, put off finding the explanation of it. Okay, so this isn't just because he's committed a murder. He's been like this over and over. He said, every time I cross this bridge, what do I see? I see the cathedral in the distance. I see the church. And it's beautiful. The whole scene is it's like a painting. It's so pretty. And every time I stand on this bridge, it just leaves me thinking, I ought to find this beautiful. I suppose I ought to be emotionally moved by this, but this raises a question for me. Like, which came first? I don't have the answer to this question. His detachment from beauty, his detachment from the church. Because I don't know about you guys. Can you look at a church without feeling something? I mean, even if it's like a Protestant denomination, like any church makes me feel something. And beautiful churches make me feel something even more, but it's just like, oh, that is the place where God is worshipped. It moves me in a way that I see it different than just a normal building. Mm-hmm. He's not been that way for a long time. So was he like that and then he hatched a plan to murder someone? Or did he hatch a plan to murder someone, who knows, months ago, years ago, and then he became like that? We don't know, but they seem to go together. Like even before he took his step and he crossed his line, he doesn't feel like we normally feel when we see something beautiful. I don't know. Okay, so for next week, I want you to finish part 2 and read part 3. That should take you roughly halfway through the book. And I also have a question. And Marta, you sent me a question about your paper, and then Raymond, you were just brilliantly helped her, apparently. But does anybody have a question or need some help on their Huckleberry Finn paper? And Meredith and Thomas, if you do, you can call me. I don't have internet this week, but you can, so emailing me, I won't get back to you right away, but you can call me if you just need help choosing a topic or laying it out. But does anybody here feel like...
Okay, so it's due next week, right?
It's due next week, but here's the plan again.
Should we bring it back next week?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to read them, scan them, and send them back to you.
Okay.
Like within 48 hours. And then let you do, and then we'll have another week or two. Because we're going to spend 3 more weeks on Crime and Punishment. I can't really say write a paper on Crime and Punishment until you've read Crime and Punishment. It seems unfair.
I've read it a few times.
Oh, well, I could, Marta. But, so you know what his motives are. More of what his motives are.
Yeah, I had a lot of time on my hands for a while.
Oh, you just... So you mean you've read this previously, yeah, or you just now
I've
just
read
went ahead
it
and read?
Previously. I've read it
okay.
a couple of times. So like, yeah.
Awesome.
It makes me think like I've been. Oh wait, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, it's like literally a dumb comment.
We don't care.
Like we've been watching Criminal Minds.
Yes.
And so then I'm thinking, I'm like, well, what's the stressor? Like, what made him have it? And then I'm thinking, what is like. It's just
he's devolving.
Yeah,
they're always devolving.
And so I'm thinking about like they always say how like they think differently, and like the killers and why they're some of them are like emotionally just unattached, like they have no feelings and they're just like they were made that way. They like grew up that way, and so like we finished this episode of like he like they said that he can't feel, like it's impossible for him to feel something, and then they're like he wants to feel something, but all he can do is kill. And so like when you said that, like if he doesn't look at a church the same, and it sparks something. I don't know, it's just like just thoughts and like why does he do that? Like why is he doing it? And so that's when you think about a killer, why does he do it? But then they're trying, like the BAU is trying to get into their head, and like I had another comment, but then I forgot. So maybe continue.
I started watching that in it was on in the mornings, and I would go downstairs and I would lift weights and do crunches and stuff, and I would watch Criminal Minds. Anyway, and so I got to watching it. But it was like weeks before I figured out what unsub meant, and it just made me sad. It still makes me mad. I just kind of want to throw something at the TV
Yeah,
every
they're
time.
like
Like,
to
that's a
unsub.
stupid thing. Just say suspect. I hate that. Anyway,
Or his
I
MO.
vented. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to turn this off. I guess you can find that out when